Alright, so this is going to be chapter 17 and chapter 18 of Etidorpha. Um, Chapter 17, The Fungus Forest, Enchantment. Along the chamber through which we now passed, I saw by the mellow light great pillars capped with umbrella-like covers, some of them reminding me of the common toadstool of Upper Earth on a magnificent scale. Instead, however, of the gray, somber shades to which I had been accustomed, these objects were of various hues and combined the brilliancy of the primary prismatic colors with the purity of clean snow. Now they would stand solitary like gigantic sentinels. Again, they would be arranged in rows, the alignment as true as if established by the hair of a transit, forming columnar avenues, and in other situations they were wedged together so as to produce masses, acres in extent, in which the stems became hexagonal by compression. The columnar stems, larger than my body, were often spiral. Again, they were marked with diamond-shaped figures or other regular geometrical forms in relief, beautifully exact, drawn as by a master's hand in rich and delicately blended colors, on pillars of pure alabaster. Not a few of the stems, deep crimson, blue, or green, together with other rich colors combined, over which, as delicate as the rarest of lace, would be thrown in white an enamel-like intricate tracery, far surpassing in beauty of execution the most exquisite needlework I had ever seen. There could be no doubt that I was in a forest of colossal fungi, the species of which are more numerous than those of upper earth cryptomatic vegetation. The expanded heads of these great thalagens were as varied as the stems I have described, and more so. Far above our path they spread like beautiful umbrellas, decorated as if by masters for whom the great painters of Upper Earth might humbly learn the art of mixing colors. Their undersurface were of many different designs, and were of as many shapes as it is conceivable could be made of combinations of the circles and hyperbola. Stately and picturesque, silent and immovable, as the Sphinx, they studded the great cavern, singly or in groups, reminding me of a grown child's wild imagination of fairyland. I stopped beside a group that was of unusual conspicuity, and gazed in admiration on the huge and yet graceful, beautiful spectacle. I placed my hand on the stem of one plant, and found it soft and impressible, but instead of being moist, cold, and clammy as the repulsive toadstool of Upper Earth, I discovered, to my surprise, that it was pleasantly warm and soft as velvet. "Smell your hand," said my guide. I did so, and breathed in an aroma like that of fresh strawberries. My guide observed I had learned to judge of his emotions by his facial expressions, my surprised countenance with indifference. "Try the next one," he said. This, being of a different species, when rubbed by my hand, exhaled the odor of a pineapple. "Extraordinary," I mused. "Not at all. Should productions of surface earth have a monopoly of nature's methods, all the flavors, all the perfumes, you may with equal consistency express astonishment at the odors of the fruits of the upper earth, if you do so at the fragrance of these vegetables, for they are also created of odorless elements." "But toadstools are foul structures of low organization. They are neither animals nor true vegetables, but occupy a station below that of plants proper," I said. "The fungus Polyporus. Here we must have our third footnote, which I don't know how I haven't seen the other ones. We'll have to look around. The fungus Polyporus gravolens was neglected by the guide. This fungus exhales a delicate odor and is used in Kentucky to perfume a room. Being quite large, it is employed to hold the door open, thus being useful as well as fragrant." You are acquainted with this order of vegetation under the end of footnote, I suppose I should say. You are acquainted with this order of vegetation under the most unfavorable conditions. Out of their native elements, these plants degenerate and become then abnormal, often evolving into the poisonous earth fungi known to your woods and fields. Here they grow to perfection. This is their chosen habitat. They absorb from a pure atmosphere the combined foods of plant and animals, and during their existence meet no scorching sunrise. They flourish in a region of perfect tranquility, and without a tremor, without experiencing the change of a fraction of a degree in temperature, exist for ages. Many of these specimens are probably thousands of years old and still growing. Why should they ever die? They have never been disturbed by a breath of moving air, and balanced exactly on their succulent pedestal-like stems. Surrounded by an atmosphere of dead nitrogen, vapor, and other gases, with their roots embedded in carbonates and minerals, they have food at command, nutrition inexhaustible.
Still, I do not see why they grow to such mammoth proportions.
Plants adapt themselves to surrounding conditions, he remarked. The oak tree, in its proper latitude, is tall and stately. Trace it toward the Arctic Circle, and it becomes knotted, gnarled, rheumatic, and dwindles to a shrub. The castor plant in the tropics is 20 or 30 feet in height. In the temperate zone, it is an herbaceous plant. Farther north, it has no existence. Indian corn in Kentucky is luxuriant, tall, and graceful, and each stalk is supplied with roots to the second and third joint, while in the Northland it scarcely reaches the shoulder of a man, and in order to escape the early northern frost, arrives at maturity before the more southern varieties begins to tassel. The common Jimson weed, Datura stramonium, planted in early spring in rich soil, grows luxuriantly, covers a broad expanse, and bears an abundance of fruit. Planted in midsummer, it blossoms when but a few inches in height, and between two terminal leaves hastens to produce a single capsule in the apex of the short stem, in order to ripen its seed before the frost appears. These and other familiar examples might be cited concerning the difference some species of vegetation of your former lands undergo under climatic conditions, less marked than between those that govern the growth of fungi here and on the surface earth. Such specimens of fungi as grow in your former home have escaped from these underground regions, and are as much out of place as they are the tropical plants transplanted to the edge of eternal snow. Indeed, more so, for on the earth the ordinary fungus, as a rule, germinates after sunset, and often dies when the sun rises, while here they may grow in peace eternally. These meandering caverns comprise thousands of miles of surface covered by these growths, which shall yet fulfill a grand purpose in the economy of nature. For they are destined to feed tramping multitudes when the day appears in which the nations of men will desert the surface of the earth, and pass as a single people through these caverns on their way to the immaculate existence to be found in the inner sphere.
I cannot disprove your statement, I again repeated, neither do I accept it. However, it still seems to me unnatural to find such delicious flavors and delicate odors connected with objects associated in memory with things insipid, or so disagreeable as toadstools and the rank forest fungi which I abhorred on earth.
Chapter 18. The Food of Man. This leads me to remark, answered the eyeless seer, that you speak without due consideration of previous experience. You are, or should be, aware of others, and as marked differences in the food products of Upper Earth, induced by a climate, soil, and cultivation. The potato, which next to wheat, rice, or corn, supplies nations of men with starchy food, originates as a wild weed in South America and Mexico, where it yet exists as a small, watery, marble-like tuber, and its nearest kindred, botanically, is still poisonous. The luscious apple reached its present excellence by slow stages from knotty, wild, astringent fruit, to which it again returns when escaped from cultivation. The cucumber is a near cousin of the gripping, medicinal, cathartic bitter apple, or colocynth, and occasionally partakes yet of the properties that result from the unfortunate alliance, as too often exemplified to persons who do not peel it.
deep enough to remove the bitter, cathartic principle that exists near the surface. Oranges in their wild condition are bitter and are used principally as medicinal agents. Asparagus was once a weed native to the salty edges of the sea, and as this weed has become a food, so it is possible for other wild weeds yet to do. Buckwheat is a weed proper, and not a cereal, and birds have learned that the seeds of many other weeds are even preferable to wheat. The wild parsnip is a poison, and the parsnip of cultivation relapses quickly into its natural condition if allowed to escape and roam again. The root of the tapioca plant contains a volatile poison and is deadly, but when the same root is properly prepared, it becomes the wholesome food tapioca. The nut of the African anacardium, cashew nut, contains a nourishing kernel that is eaten as food by the natives, and yet a drop of the juice of the oily shell placed on the skin will blister and produce terrible inflammations. Only those expert in the removal of the kernel dare partake of the food. The berry of the Berberis vulgaris is a pleasant acid fruit. The bough that bears it is intensely bitter. Such examples might be multiplied indefinitely, but I have cited enough to illustrate the fact that neither the difference in size and structure of the species in the mushroom forest through which we are passing, nor the conditions of these bodies, as compared with those you formerly knew, need excite your astonishment. Cultivate a potato in your former home so that the growing tuber is exposed to sunshine and it becomes green and acrid and strongly virulent. Cultivate the spores of the intra-earth fungi about us, on the face of the earth, and although now all parts of the plant are edible, the species will degenerate and may even become poisonous. They lose their flavor under such unfavorable conditions, and although some species still retain vitality enough to resist poisonous degeneration, they dwindle in size and adapt themselves to new and unnatural conditions. They have all degenerated. Here they live on water, pure nitrogen and its modifications, grasping with their roots the carbon of the disintegrated limestone, affiliating these substances and evolving from these bodies rich and delicate flavors, far superior to the flavor of Earth's surface foods. On the surface of Earth, after they become abnormal, they live only on dead and devitalized organic matter, having lost the power of assimilating elementary matter. They then partake of the nature of animals, breathe oxygen, and exhale carbonic acid as animals do, being the reverse of other plant existences. Here, they breathe oxygen, nitrogen, and the vapor of water, but exhale some of the carbon in combination with hydrogen, thus evolving these delicate ethereal essences instead of the poisonous gas carbonic acid. Their substance is here made up of all elements necessary for the support of animal life. Nitrogen to make muscle, carbon and hydrogen for fat, lime for bone. This fungoid forest could feed a multitude. It is probable that in the time to come when man deserts the bleak earth's surface, as he will some day be forced to do, as has been the case in frozen planets that are not now inhabited on the outer crust, nations will march through these spaces, on their way from the dreary outside earth to the delights of the salubrious inner sphere. Here, then, when that day of necessity appears, as it surely will come under inflexible climatic changes that will control the density of outer earth life, these constantly increasing stores, adapted to nourish humanity, will be found accumulated and ready for food. You have already eaten them, for the variety of food with which I supplied you has been selected from different portions of these nourishing products, which, flavored and salted, ready for use as food, stand intermediate between animal and vegetable, supplying the place of both. My instructor placed both hands on my shoulders, and in silence I stood gazing intently into his face. Then, in a smooth, captivating, entrancing manner, he continued, "Can you not see that food is not matter? The material part of the bread is carbon, water, gas, and earth. The material part of fat is charcoal and gas. The material part of flesh is water and gas. The material part of fruits is mostly water with a little charcoal and gas. The material constituents of all food are plentiful, they abound everywhere, and yet, amid the unlimited unorganized materials that go form foods, man would starve.
Footnote 4. By the term gas, it is evident that hydrogen and nitrogen were designated, and yet, since the instructor insists that other gases form part of the atmosphere, so he may consistently imply that unknown gases are parts of food. End of footnote. Give a healthy man a diet of charcoal, water, lime salts, and air. Say to him, bread contains no other substance. Here is bread, the material food of man. Live on this food, and yet the man, if he can eat these, will die with his stomach distended. So with all other foods. Give man the unorganized materialistic constituents of food in unlimited amounts, and starvation results. No, matter is not food, but a carrier of food.
What is food?
Sunshine. The grain of wheat is a food by virtue of the sunshine fixed within it. The flesh of animals, the food of living creatures, are simply carriers of sunshine energy. Break out the sunshine, and you destroy the food, although the material remains. The growing plant locks the sunshine in its cells, and the living animal takes it out again. Hence, it is that after the sunshine of any food is liberated during the metamorphosis of the tissues of an animal, although the material part of the food remains, it is no longer a food, but becomes a poison. And then, if it is not promptly eliminated from the animal, it will destroy the life of the animal. This material becomes then injurious, but it is still material. The farmer plants a seed in the soil, the sunshine sprouts it, nourishes the growing plant, and during the season locks itself to and within its tissues, binding the otherwise dead materials of that tissue together into an organized structure. Animals eat these structures, break them from higher to lower compounds, and in doing so, live on the stored up sunshine, and then excrete the worthless material side of the food. The farmer spreads these excluded substances over the earth again to once more take up the sunshine in the coming part of organization. But not until it does once more lock in its cells the energy of sunshine can it be a food for that animal.
Is
manure a food? He abruptly asked.
No.
Is not manure matter?
Yes.
May it not become a food again as a part of another plant when another season passes?
Yes.
In what else than energy, sunshine, does it differ from food?
Water is a necessity, I said.
And locked in each molecule of water there is a mine of sunshine. Liberate suddenly the sun energy from the gases of the ocean held in subjection thereby, and the earth would disappear in an explosion that would reverberate throughout the universe. The water that you truly claim to be necessary to the life of man is itself water by the grace of this same sun, for without its heat, the water would be ice, dry as dust. 'Tis the sun that gives life and motion to creatures, animate and substances inanimate. He who doubts distrusts his Creator. Food and drink are only carriers of bits of assimilable sunshine. When the fire worshippers kneel to their god, the sun, they worship the great food reservoir of man. When they drew the quivering entrails from the body of a sacrificed victim, they gave back to their god a spark of sunshine. It was due sooner or later. They builded well in thus recognizing the source of all life, and yet they acted badly, for their god asked no premature sacrifice. The inevitable must soon occur, and as all organic life comes from that sun god, so back to that Creator the sun spark, must fly.
But they are heathen. There is a God beyond their narrow conception of God.
As there is also a God in the beyond, past your idea of God. Perhaps to beings of higher mentalities we may be heathen, but even if this is so, duty demands that we revere the God within our intellectual sphere. Let us not digress further. The subject now is food, not the supreme Creator, and I say to you, the food of man and the organic life of man is sunshine.
He ceased, and I reflected upon his words. All he had said seemed so consistent that I could not deny its plausibility. and yet it still appeared altogether unlikely as viewed in the light of my previous earth knowledge. I did not quite comprehend all the semi-scientific expressions, but was at least certain that I could neither disprove nor verify his propositions. My thoughts wandered aimlessly, and I found myself questioning whether man could be prevailed upon to live contentedly in situations such as I was now passing through. In company with my learned and philosophical but fantastically created guardian and monitor, I moved on.
And that's the end of chapter 18.